Greetings, Kerbonauts. Space Fox Prismian here, and today I will show you how to install the planet pack called Kerbal Star Systems 2 for Kerbal Space Program. So, as some of you might know, KSS2 is completely a manual install. So you need to install the planet pack manually, and I'll show you how to do it. First of all, I will show you how to install all the dependencies and some of the visual mods. But first you need to figure out where to install them. So here I have a KSP install for this tutorial, and if you want to know where the folders are, you right click on it and open file location. Now you have all of the folders here, and the important folder here is the game data folder. This is where you will install all of the things. So the first thing I will actually be installing is Volumetric Clouds, because that one is from Patreon, so you have to go to BlackRack's Patreon and get the mod from there, so it costs you a few dollars, but yeah. So basically, hold on. I will open up Second File Explorer, go into Downloads, and then I just need to find it. There it is. So this is basically the volumetric clouds, and what you can do is basically you go into game data, or you can just drag the game data folder into the Kerbal Space Program folder, which is what I'm going to do here. Then it unzips all the files. And voila, now in game data, you will have those files installed. Now we are going to the dependencies. I have them opened up here. And yes. So I will first install Copernicus. Copernicus is the most important dependency, because without of it, KSS2 wouldn't work. Now in the past, Copernicus actually included all of its dependencies, but that's no longer the case, so I'll show you how to install the dependencies of Copernicus as well. First, we actually get the Copernicus itself. Wait. Yeah. This might take a bit, sorry. Right, here we have the KSP. And as you can see, it's only the Copernicus now. So, what we are going to do is go back here and drag this one here. And now it is installed. And from now on, I will only show the game data folder, because it makes it a bit easier to see what's getting installed and what's not getting installed. I will also keep this open so that it's going to be easier to show you how it's done. Now with Copernicus out of the way, we need KSP Texture Loader, which is the new dependency Copernicus uses since release 232. I will install the texture loader and also the Parallax Continued zip, since it contains a modified version of Parallax Continued. Now, KSS2 doesn't need the modified version of Parallax Continued yet, because it doesn't use the kind of textures yet that KSP Texture Loader supports now, as far to my knowledge, but I'll still do it anyway. Now we get KSP Texture Loader and drag it over here. Another thing we need is Harmony. Harmony is basically what allows most mods to actually load. So we download this. And install Harmony as well. Another thing that we need is Module Manager. We just get the most recent version. And simply drag the DLL file over here. Also, another thing that we need is Modular Flight Integrator. Simply drag it again. And so this would basically be all the dependencies you would usually need, but I will install a few extra mods. Oh wait, there's some dependencies missing. Right. Where was it? Right, you also need Copernicus expansion, which enables wormholes and all of that stuff. So we download this. And install the Copernicus expansion. Also, another thing that we need is KSP community fixes, because, yeah, there is some bugs that do need it in order to work. Also, we need vertex Mitchell Netravali height map, which is a more smooth version of the Copernicus provided height map. Then we need this mod here for oblate bodies. Then we need this mod here for emissives. Scale decorator is for some visuals. Now what I will say is that I will include the links to all of the downloads in the description of the video so that you can get an easier, so that you know where they are. Another thing that I will install is Sigma loading screens, which will enable custom loading screens for KSS2. Then another thing that is optional is parallax continued. So here we need the mod itself, the scatter textures, the terrain textures, and the planet textures. Now this is going to take a little bit since those are some pretty big files. So yeah, first of all, we install parallax continued. itself. Planet textures are done, so now we can also install them. Scatter textures are done, so this is next. Yeah, as you can see, it's basically quite a bunch of stuff if you want the full experience, but yeah. And now finally the terrain textures. Alright, so Parallax Continued is fully installed, but now we need another dependency called KSP Burst. For that we need to install the compiler. And the other, its thing itself. First KSP Burst. Okay, now I'm actually a bit confused. Okay, I don't think we need a compiler for this one, so let's see if that's the case actually. Now the next thing is Singularity, which gives black holes their and wormholes their visual effects. So we download the latest release from there. And now finally for the visual stuff we install the third. So now that's... So now all of this should be done. And if we once again take a look at our game data folder, you can see that we now have a bunch of mods installed. So now comes the time to actually install KSS2 itself. For that we go onto the KSS2 GitHub here. And the first two things we need to install are the KSS2 core configs and the KSS2 core textures. Without these both, the mod will not function because those contain a bunch of textures and config that are essential for the mod to work. So first we download the configs and then the textures. And as you can see, KSS2 is quite of a big mod installation-wise. So basically the minimum amount of RAM you will need to use the mod properly are 16 gigabytes. And you should also have at least 2 gigabytes of VRAM installed. And optionally, you should have basically more than 2 gigabytes, at least 4 gigabytes of VRAM, and also 32 or more gigabytes of RAM. So now that the core configs are ready, we go into here, and this is basically the folder we need. So we have our game data folder here, and now we drag the KSS2 folder into the game data folder. Now the files will be copied. And now we need the core textures. So we copy the KSS2 folder from the KSS2 core textures also into the game data folder. Okay, we have two files with the same name. Yeah, we can actually skip this step because those are the same files. Alright, now we look into the KSS2 folder and we have the core stuff installed. Now it is actually time to install some of the systems. Now for this tutorial I will only install the Nova Kerbani system, but the installation step for all the system is actually the same. So for the system you want, you essentially download the corresponding zip file. Boom. Now once again go here and look for the KSS2 folder. Once again we will drag it into our KSP installs game data. And now we have the system Nova Kerbani folder in our KSS2 folder. So basically for the alpha systems it will also say system and the system name, and those should all be located inside your KSS2 folder, inside your game data folder. Now we will actually boot up KSP and see if everything was done correctly. So essentially the initial loading time will be a bit longer, since the mod will need to generate the cache file for the planets. So I will see you once the loading has been done. Alright, the game has loaded and now we will actually look to see if everything has been installed. I will be using one of the saves I'm currently not using to see if everything works, so we will do that. So here everything has loaded fine and now we will log into the tracking station. And zoom out. And as you can see, the Nova Kerbonauts system has been installed correctly. And now we can take a look at all of the planets here. Oh, and as you can see, we have also witnessed a coronal mass ejection, if that's the correct thing. Pretty nice. So yeah, this the most recent updated version 4.0.1, I believe it's called. It basically adds those solar flares to stars using scale decorator, and I can say they look pretty nice. And as you can see, all of the planets seem to have loaded. And here we have Novan. Okay, that's a pretty nice egg, I must say. So now, basically, another thing that is the Nova Kerbonauts system actually has some expansions. And I will show you those expansions. But first we will look at different planets like Blalo. Looking pretty fancy, and look at those wings. So before I get sidetracked, we will also install the Pandora expansion, which basically makes Novan into a new planet called Polynovan, and that's Pandora, which is a Pandora analog from the Avatar movies. So first we close the game. Then we once again open the file location, go into game data, and now we install the expansion pandora.zip. So first we download it. And once again, we drag the KSS2 folder over into that game data folder of our KSP install we want the mod to be installed. Now it's copying the files again. And as you can see now, there's an expansions folder in there, which is where all of the stuff for the Pandora expansion and the other expansion called the Red Blalo expansion is located. So now we will close everything here and once again boot up the game and see if everything had worked. loaded, and now we will get back into the safe and look at, well, look if everything has worked properly. Also, the warnings that are shown, those are non-essential basically, since, yeah, basically those warnings may be some module manager stuff basically, but everything seems to work, so it shouldn't be a big deal. And as you can see, Novin has been renamed to Polynovin. And look at that. Okay, hold on. Yeah, it's lagging a bit, but so basically, as you can see, it now looks way more like the planet Polyphemus from the Avatar movies. And so basically one of the moons is now south, and the other one is Pandora, which is the Pandora analog. So yeah, everything seems to have worked properly, and with that I will say thanks for watching the video, and yeah, since it's basically the last day of the year, I wish you all a happy 2026. See ya!